The Tigers drop a series to the Miami Marlins over the weekend. Kind of a nice farewell tour moment for Miguel Cabrera. Goes back to Miami, plays really well on top of that, and the fans show out, which was a nice moment. But after a ridiculous baseball game on Sunday, the Tigers still come out of the weekend as the losing team. Let's talk about it all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Monday, July 31st, 2023. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Be sure to check out the Tigers home radio broadcast on the SiriusXM app as well. It's as simple as that. You just go to the SiriusXM app, search Detroit Tigers, and next thing you know, you're listening to the home broadcast, which is a very cool feature that I know a lot of people take advantage of in this city because of our great home radio broadcast. So let's talk about this series. Tigers dropped 2 of 3 to the Marlins in Miami. Frustrating is definitely a word I would use to describe this. A lot of people really upset at this series. And I understand how frustrating Sunday was. Obviously, that was a ridiculous baseball game on so many different accounts, to be completely honest with you. A pretty wild call at one point that we will talk about. I mean, interesting decisions all around. We'll talk about it for sure, but a lot of people really upset. And it's frustrating that we're already at this point where, like, as the season goes along, people are going to care less and less about, like, the wins and losses on a day-to-day basis. And, like, they should. We're 12 games under 500 at the end of July. In 2019, were you red in the face mad over like losses in September? No, we already had 100. You know what I mean? Like you can't live like that. Like and I, like, you know, coming from me, that's rich. I understand. Like I am probably far too competitive and care about this team way more than I should. But it's one of those things where, like, people are going to take a step back and I feel like this was a turning point of a series for a lot of people for whatever reason. Maybe just timing with the deadline looming. Maybe it was the fact that the Marlins decided to take a personal jab at the city of Detroit for no reason. I don't know. But it really upset a lot of people. And I understand. the fan half of my brain understands. And the analyst part of my brain yells at the fan part of my brain and says, stop caring about wins and losses. This team is 12 games under 500. They're going to lose a lot more. And so, especially after we trade some of our best players here in the next 48 hours. So let's talk about this series, though. Let's break it down. I want to start with Miguel Cabrera. You know, I thought that this was awesome for Miggy. Going back to Florida, he looked good, too. Like, that's the coolest part of the whole thing to me. Like, if he had gotten, you know, the big ovation and the fans all showed out, and you're welcome, by the way. Just a ridiculous way to repay. Like, I that really bothered me. Like, I get way too protective over the city of Detroit. I get very defensive and protective over the city that I love dearly. But like for those who aren't aware, like Matt Vierling was batting. I think it was his first at bat of the game on Sunday, and they just randomly put on the big screen, like, no to the game. Detroit has lost 65% of its populations in the last 60 years. What? Okay. Why Matt Vierling, too? He's played here for 3 months. But, like, that ruffled a lot of feathers, which, like, rightfully so, understandable. Like, what a wild way to repay a team that is you are 29th in attendance. The only team that has less and worse attendance than the Marlins this year is the Oakland Athletics, who are actively, purposely not going to baseball games. Like, it's just a wild way to repay. Like, hey, we're going to bring Miguel Cabrera and put butts in the seats for you this weekend. Oh, well, we're going to make a personal, whatever. I'm probably spending way too much time on this, but you know, things like that bother me. Anyway, that all being said, I did really like how the fan base certainly handled Miguel Cabrera's return. And again, like seeing him do well was the best part. He had a great weekend. He was fantastic. And that'll put a smile on everybody's face. Like he looked really, really good and was hitting the ball all over the place. Couple of multi-hit games, some power. Not that he was hitting homers, but like they weren't just like seeing eye singles. Like he was hitting the ball pretty consistently into the gaps. He hit one over the outfielder's head at one point. One was like bounced off the wall. Like he was spraying the ball all over the field. Looked like some prime Miguel Cabrera again. So what a great way for him to go out just in his last series in Florida. I very much appreciate the fans showing out, and I have no like ill will toward like the Marlins fan base. Just like I don't think I'm going to root for you to make the playoffs now. But just I really liked this weekend for Miggy. It was a really, really cool moment in a long line of great moments that he has given us over his career. This weekend will probably be remembered as one of those cool moments. Even if we did drop 2 of 3, and at the end of the Marlins do miss the playoffs, and ends up just kind of being a meaningless series in July, it'll still be cool to be like, hey, in his last series in Miami, going back home, Venezuela's home, but like you know what I'm saying, back to his original ball club, for him to kind of show out like that was pretty cool. So hats off to Miguel Cabrera yet again. We have done that plenty of times over the last 15 years. Let's talk about the starters in this game. Let's start talking about the games themselves. Reese Olson started on Friday. Reese Olson, I think, has the potential to be a really effective pitcher at the major league level. I love Reese Olson's stuff. And like that slider is legit. I mean, that thing has an elite whiff rate. People swing and miss at it all the time. He can be a really effective pitcher at the major league level. It's just a matter of whether that's going to be as a starter or a reliever. And I think that he will, and I tweeted this out as well, but like he will go as far as his fastball takes him. And this is not something that we have not talked about on this show a plethora of times, right? Like we've been talking about this since he was in the minors, like when he first got called up. And I feel like I was the Debbie Downer that was kind of like, hey, everybody, like, let's maybe limit our expectations on Reese Olson a little bit. I don't know. He hasn't been fantastic in Toledo. And then his first 3 or 4 outings, he was great. And his last couple, he's kind of gone back down to earth a little bit. I think his ERA is over 5 now. So like he's taken some steps back from the hot start he got off too early. But like there are tangible areas that you can point to and be like that tools, I guess, that you can point to. Be like, that's why this dude's going to be good. Like that slider is great. The changeup has been effective as well. That was a big question mark. Does he have a legitimate third pitch? But his fastball, I mean, not to be like overly dramatic, but like so far at the major league level, it just isn't effective whatsoever. It is getting hit all over the yard. The slugging percentage against, this is what I tweeted out on Friday, the slugging percentage against his four-seam fastball is brutal. It's like Aaron Judge is at the plate whenever he throws a fastball. It's like 600 something. So like it's all going to come down to that. And he's tried to have like a sinker that tails a little bit more and has more downward movement. That also has like a higher slugging percentage than, not as high as the four-seam fastball, but like a pretty sizable, like it's certainly higher than the other 2 pitches, the changeup and the slider. So he needs to work on that. It would not shock me whatsoever if he went into this winter with like that being the goal. How can I, whether it's a grip, whether he wants to change the shape of his fastball, whether, I don't know, he wants to make it more of a 2-seamer. I don't know, but you need to do something. Cutter, I don't care what it ends up looking like as long as it's more effective than the current iteration of it. But that's going to be a big step in his development. And that's pretty much, he had a couple of hanging sliders as well. I'm not trying to make it sound like that was the only thing that went wrong for him on Friday, but I mean, that is like the biggest thing that consistently goes wrong for him on a start-to-start basis. So something to keep an eye out there is just how good his fastball looks. That's something you can watch for while you watch Reese Olson pitch. Okay, let's talk about Tarek Skubal, because that was a really interesting start as well. But first, I got to tell y'all about our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is, oh, where's the banner? Oh, no. There it is. Boom. FanDuel is the best. And because they are the best, you can take your first swing at betting on MLB at FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. You can bet just $20 and land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend on betting everything from the money line, over under, who you think is going to hit the first home run, etc. And it's all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. It's what makes it the best. So sign up today and visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get $200 in bonus bets on America's #1 sports book. That's fanduel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. I appreciate you all for tuning in, making us your first listen every day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We'll be back tomorrow recapping nothing because they don't play on Monday. Tomorrow's episode is just going to be strictly deadline talk. The official trade deadline kind of preview thing. The trade deadline is 6 p.m. Eastern time, I believe. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's 6 p.m. on August 1st. We will be having a Twitter space hosted by, if you follow me on Twitter, if you follow the show on Twitter, if you're really cool and you follow both, you'll certainly see it. I'll tweet about it as well. But we're going to go into the deadline as a group on a Twitter space, have a conversation. You'll be taking a ton of questions just from people that want to come up and ask about whatever returns or questions about anything about the deadline, really. So that'll be a fun thing to look forward to. Tarik Skubal pitched on Sunday. He was really, really good until he wasn't. And I know that that's like not analysis, but it's true. He was lights out for the first 4 innings. And then the 5th inning, he absolutely just imploded. And if this is for the real ones, all right, this one's for the real ones here. If you remember back when I first took over as host of this show, okay, that would be like 2021. June or July of 2021. I know it was a series against the Angels. Whenever Matt Manning's debut was, that's when I took over. Tarik Skubal consistently throughout 2021, would have 5 really strong innings and then 1 absolutely awful inning. And it wasn't always the last inning that he pitched, but there would always be 1 inning that was dreadful. So much so, he was so consistent with it that on the show, we had joked about trademarking the Skubal inning. And we mentioned it throughout the rest of the year. And then 2021 came along and he kind of ironed it out a little bit. And it really wasn't a thing anymore. And we kind of moved on from the Skubal inning narrative. And this really was just a vintage Skubal inning performance back from 2021, honestly. He was dominant. I cannot undersell how good he was the first 4 innings. He was phenomenal. He had 1 hit. He was getting swings and misses on everything. The fastball, the slider, the changeup was disgusting. He was great. And then he didn't cover first base 1 time in the 5th inning, and everything just fell apart. And the reason why it fell apart was command. That doesn't take a rocket science to figure out if you watch the game. Every single thing that was hit was hard of the plate. Go look after pretty much every slider specifically he threw after he didn't cover first base. I swear was like middle. It's like he was trying to throw it as down the middle as he possibly could. His fastball is so good, and it's even better now than it was pre-injury. Like I said, the changeup was good. The slider was good for 4 innings. He was lights out, and then he just wasn't, at the snap of the fingers. He just, I keep wanting to say overnight, but obviously that's not overnight. From 1 inning to the next, it just completely evaporated. So I don't want to go too much on he's just back to 2021. I think that part of it may just be working back from injury, because this was at the end of an outing. It wasn't like his 2nd inning was awful and then the rest was fine. There seems to be pretty consistently at the end of his outings, he lets up. So I think part of it might just be getting that stamina back in his arm and being able to consistently go deeper in the ball games and not getting tired at the 60 or 65 pitch mark. I do think that could be part of it. So I'm not gonna go in too hard on him for this, but it's impossible not to talk about, just given his history of struggling for exactly 1 inning throughout his career. So we'll see what he does, but that's kind of what I took away from it. Still, you see the ceiling, you see the potential. He's lethal. Let's talk about the bullpen. So Saturday was kind of a bullpen day, so that's why we didn't talk about Bo Brisky. Technically started the game. He was fine. I thought Bo Brisky was pretty solid. I'm just still waiting for something horizontal, something slider, whatever. I think that'll be something he works on in the winter for sure. But with that game, the Tigers had a shutout on Saturday. Joey Wentz, the return of Joey Wentz. I tried to say it at the time, and a lot of people, he was just struggling so much that people were like, "We don't care, boo, you're an idiot, he sucks," which is like fine. That just kind of comes with the territory. But like I have maintained throughout this entire time, like Joey Wentz has good stuff. Like that cutter will play. That cutter literally reinvented his career. If you know the career arc of Joey Wentz, it was like pretty solid prospect, big injury, doesn't pitch for a year, comes back, is like okay, but like kind of struggling when he comes back, throws a cutter into the mix, career takes off. Like legitimately takes off. And I think that it's one of those things where command. I mean, it was not good in his bad outings. The command was brutal. But also just consistently having the confidence to throw any pitch in any count. That's something that the best pitchers have, right? And I think that Joey Wentz lost that very much when he was consistently going out there and, I mean, like legitimately just getting rocked for the first 3 months of this season. So it's not a true start. He was a reliever, whatever. It was only 4 innings. I don't care. I just really enjoyed seeing Joey Wentz go out there and put a really solid outing under his belt. All right. As far as the other, I mean, Tyler Holton finally gave up a run. He's a human being. So like that's, learning that he was a human was kind of sad. But for like, if you think that I'm going to get upset over Tyler Holton, you are sorely mistaken. Like that dude has been one of the better relievers in the entire game of baseball in terms of just like not giving up runs this year. So like he's not the reason we lost the game. Like everyone, I say this all the time, I know, but like everyone is so obsessed with like this loss is on this one person specifically, and it's this person's fault. Very rarely do I agree with that. Very rarely do I think that losses are one, especially in baseball. Like that's just not how it works. And so yeah, so I mean, you could tell he was upset that he gave up the homer, which is sucks to watch. But yeah, I'm not too upset as long as he doesn't just like explode and just his ERA balloons and he does this for the next 5 outings in a row. I think I'm still going to be pretty pleased with still even after this outing sub 2 ERA Tyler Holton this season. Brennan White still has to find slider command. It's such a nasty pitch and he just has no command over it right now. The only other thing, I was trying to think if there's anything else besides Jason Foley I wanted to talk about. Oh, Jose Cisnero. Jose Cisnero, his ERA by month. Let's go over his ERA by month, shall we? April 3.72, May 2.53, June 0, 11 outings 0, July 10.38. Why does this happen? What did we do? Like as fans, we need to seriously look in the mirror and be like, what did we do? This team hasn't been good in almost a decade. I mean, that's probably a little bit of an exaggeration. 2016, they barely missed the postseason, but like they haven't been good in over half a decade. And now we're at a point where even I was like, hey, Cisneros kind of an under the radar trade piece. Don't be surprised if he gets moved. He has an ERA over 10 in the month of July since I said that at the beginning of the month. Just so on brand for this organization. After an ERA of 0 in June, it's now 10.38. His ERA on the season has ballooned. It is almost 4 now at the time. I think it's literally 3.99. It's just frustrating. I still think they try to move him, but like frustrating nonetheless. All right, let's keep talking. Let's talk about Jason Foley, then we'll get to the offense. We'll do that right after this. All right, everybody, welcome back. Third and final segment here of Locked On Tigers. I appreciate y'all for tuning in, making us your first listen every single day. Jason Foley showed some dents in the armor as well. I had a rant. This is back in like April, maybe even May, where Foley obviously has been great all year. I'm certainly not going to get like upset or again blame a single loss on like a 1 inning reliever because that's ridiculous. But Jason Foley definitely did not have a great weekend. He gave up a lot of contact, several runs. I think Friday, I think Cody Stavenhagen of The Athletic tweeted out that Jason Foley giving up 2 runs on Friday. It's only the second time all year he's given up more than 1 run in an outing. Like he's unreal. Okay. But I mean, he left one sinker way up, like one of the worst sinkers I think he's thrown literally all year. Besides that, I didn't think he looked like bad. I didn't think he looked a lot worse than he usually like looks. Like he looked pretty much just like Jason Foley. He was hitting 100 consistently at one point. Like it's not like he looked awful, but he is not a swing and miss guy. And I went, that's ADHD brain. I went on a I don't want to say a rant, but I don't know, a monologue, whatever. Back in April or May, where I was like, at some point this season, this dude's gonna go through whether it's a series or a week or 2 weeks, where he gives up some runs and the whole fan base is gonna freak out and talk as if he's like awful or is cooked or is like bad now. And then he's going to go back to being good again. And it's just because he's a pitch to contact guy first and foremost. It's a ground ball. He hasn't given up a single home run this season. Knock on wood. Goodness, I probably shouldn't have said that. But like, you know what I mean? Like this is bound to happen. And 2 of the 3 hits he gave up, one was like barely out of the reach of Torkelson's glove. One was, the infield was shifted and it just went just out of reach of the second baseman's glove. Like it's just, I don't know. I am not losing sleep over it. I don't think Jason Foley's like awful. And a lot of people really had some strong reactions about Jason Foley, which I just think is ridiculous given the state of this team. We have the 29th ranked offense and we're complaining about a reliever with a 2 ERA. Let's talk about the offense though, because admittedly in this series, they were not terrible. They put up 5 runs, and 6 runs over the weekend. Yeah, 5, 5, and 6. That's pretty solid. That's a pretty solid weekend. The one thing that continued to bite them, especially on Sunday, was how well they did with runners in scoring position, or how poorly, I guess, on Sunday. I understand that the average of going 4 for 16 with runners in scoring position is not bad. And like that would make them if their average was 400, that would make them the greatest team with runners in scoring position like we've ever seen. But that is such a large sample size that you absolutely have the right to be upset about it, right? We talk about that all the time. The RISP has been a big talking point for this team on this show over the year. And like they failed with runners in scoring position a double-digit amount of time, 12 times in this baseball game. That's just unacceptable to look back on. Even if you were successful 4 and the average doesn't look bad, 12 times you couldn't get a hit with RISP. And on Sunday, they had 2 plays at the plate. On top of that, both close plays, and neither of them went the Tigers' way. Not that they were wrong, but just frustrating. Just really frustrating. Riley Green is him. It's scary for the rest of the league because he's not even close to fully here yet. And like, I don't say that to give him unreachable expectations or anything like that, but like when the power truly fully translates, like the pull side power, when that truly like is like here and has made the transition, he's going to be even more unbelievable than he already is. So I think that, John Morosi says the Braves are trying to add a starting pitcher. Can I interest you in Michael Lorenzen or Eduardo Rodriguez? So I think that it's just one of those things where he's going to continue to get better, and that's awesome. He's really, really good. Torkelson, pretty hit or miss, no pun intended. Had some pretty solid at-bats and some pretty poor at-bats. Had a couple of warning track flyouts as well. That park is not a home run friendly park. I know Comerica gets a lot of heat for that, but that park down in Miami is certainly not much better than Comerica. Really, the only other thing I want to talk about offensively is Kerry Carpenter. We'll talk about him in a second when we talk about defense, unfortunately, too. But the thing with Carp is lately he has had like no power, and the cool and not scary, but like it's kind of good and kind of bad. Like he's been struggling a little bit lately. And so that's kind of like the bad, but he's not struggling to the extent of like he's striking out way more than we're used to, or he's not walking ever, or he's not even getting hits. Like he still has some hits to his name. We talked about the LA series. He had some of the only hits in some of these entire games, right? The one hitter was just Kerry Carpenter. The thing is, there's no power right now, and that's the weird thing. So it's nice to know that even when he's quote unquote struggling and like not at his peak, that is that he's still going to be able to get some hits and put the ball in play, and his slumps aren't going to be like, oh my goodness, this dude has 20 strikeouts in the last week. But like it's one of those weird things. So I'm not saying he like doesn't have it in. His swing is still the exact same. It's still an automatic barrel. I think it's going to come back. It's just kind of baseball. But in the last couple of weeks, the power, very few extra base hits over the last couple of weeks. But still a very clutch hit in this game off of a lefty at that, a nasty one at that. A clutch 2 RBI single to the pull side off of AJ Puck. Yeah, man, he's the man. He's still Kerry Carpenter. That's the dog. On the flip side, his defense was on display as it usually is on Sunday. Just a rough game. Sunday was just so bad. We're going to talk about the call in a second. But Kerry Carpenter goes out and that was not a good play, and he's going to be a DH long term. Like he has so much to prove to people to like actually prove that he's not just going to be a DH for 80% of his career. Like he's got such a long way to go. It's not disappointing because he's the only dude on this team. Well, Riley Green's back now, but like he's one of the only dudes on this team that can consistently hit a baseball. So like I'll live with it gladly. For the 29th ranked offense, I'll make that substitution every single day of the week. But it's still, I don't even mind putting him out there. Just see if he can try and get better this season. I mean, why not? But it is very, very proven pretty much every time he's in the outfield that he still has a long way to go defensively. Let's talk about the play in this game. Zach Short gets called for, is that technically interference? I don't even know what the call technically is called, but there's a pickle in between second and third, and Zach Short just completely collides with the Marlins base runner, and he is rewarded, the base runner, rewarded third base. And even though the Tigers very much had him dead in their sights of the rundown, I think that is a completely ridiculous call. And he blatantly jumps into Zach Short, like launches, like you can look at his knees and like it's an exact replication of like someone who's jumping. Like he pushes himself. He goes airborne at one point. Like he literally launches himself into Zach Short. So I thought that it was ridiculous. I don't know. Everyone's mad about it. I'm mad about it. I'm not really sure what else to say, but like, yeah, it was a ridiculous call. That all being said, that rundown should have been executed significantly better. And looking for the defender to see if you can try to induce contact is something that is taught in baseball. And so I'm not going to say hats off because optically, the Marlins pissed me off enough this weekend. I'm not going to give them too much credit for anything at the moment because I'm still upset. But that is something that is taught on the baseball field to look for when you're in a pickle. And it's not executed too terribly often because these are major leaguers and they're not getting that close to the base runner with the ball in their hand because usually you just tag the guy. I think basically my point is I think Zach Short could have executed that rundown way better. And I think he would tell you that. I think he did say that in his post-game interview. But at the same time, that doesn't make it not a ridiculous call. And that's just like, that's one of those things where, A, it's ridiculous that that's not reviewable. I know a lot of people have already said that as well. But that's just like a super subjective thing. Like, I'm sure if you asked a bunch of umpires, several of them would have varying opinions. Like, they'd all have different opinions on it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I don't know. That game pissed me off. And it pissed everybody off. I know. But, like, everything about every 50-50 play on Sunday did not go our way. And I'm not saying that they were wrong. I'm not saying that they were incorrect, but like Riley Green, close play at first base, doesn't go our way. 2 times we were thrown out at home on bang plays that could have been reviewed or were reviewed. Didn't get either of them. This call, didn't get that. Like every single 50-50 toss up, it could be the Tigers' way, it could be the Marlins' way. 100% of them went to the Marlins on Sunday. And you play 162 games, and that's just how it goes sometimes, right? Again, like this is not like I'm not declaring war or anything like against the Marlins. I'm not saying that the umpire crew was awful, but it was just one of those days, man. It was just one of those days. That's really my analysis of it. We'll end on some trade deadline talk. Really, all I want to say today, we'll get into like a full breakdown tomorrow. We have no game to recap, whole half hour just talking about the deadline. Finally, we can be done. Goodness, man. I just want to be done talking about it. Just get me through this deadline. And like, it's fun. It's exciting. I can't wait to talk to y'all about it, answer some questions, have some conversations about, the deadline and whatnot. I'm very excited for that. The deadline day is one of my favorite days of the year, but like the lead up to it is awful. I hate all the rumors. They change every 2 seconds. You know how many conflicting reports I've heard about the Mets? Oh, they're not trading anyone. Oh, the Mets are trading everyone. Oh, Mets will hold on to Scherzer. Oh, Scherzer got traded. I hate it. I can't stand it. So I can't wait for it to be over. But all I want to say right now, as we head into Monday, where a trade may or may not happen on Monday, is that I am of the mindset that unless your name is Riley Green, if I get a notification that says fill in the blank has been traded from the Detroit Tigers, as long as that fill in the blank does not say Riley Green's name, I am going to not instantly be upset. That's all I'm saying. That doesn't mean I'm going to look at the return and not be upset. I'm not saying trade everybody. I'm not saying have a full-blown fire sale and get rid of 20 of the people on this roster. I'm not saying trade Tarek Skubal, which I've had to justify that a million times since I said it a week ago. I'm not saying Spencer Torkelson's on the trade block. I'm not just all I'm saying is I think if someone gives you an unbelievable, ridiculous, wholly overpay Batman return, I'm okay with parting ways with a wholly overpay Batman return on 25 of the 26 people on this roster. I think everybody has a price outside of him, I guess is my point. So we'll see. And again, that doesn't mean I'm going to be happy if we trade everyone. If we trade Tarek Skubal for a C-level prospect, Tuesday's episode, or Wednesday's episode, I guess it'll be, is going to be very upsetting, and I'm going to scream. But I guess I'm saying I could be convinced for parting ways with pretty much everyone except one player, if the price is right. That's kind of my mindset. Hopefully I articulated that well and I don't have to defend myself yet again and say that I would not shop like, Carpenter or Torkelson or Skubal or whatever. We'll see what happens though. We'll see. We'll have final predictions and whatnot on yesterday's show. That'll be kind of more of a full breakdown. But as we go into Monday, if you see a name and you see someone's traded, don't get mad until you see the return. That's all I want to send people into the deadline with. All right. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Yeah, I think that's it. Again, we have a core. We have kind of like the semblance of a core. And I'm not advocating to get rid of those guys, but if someone's going to give you better pieces for your core, then you should probably take it. We'll see what happens though. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I really don't think there is. So I'm just going to let you go. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch you all tomorrow. And on Tuesday for the deadline, go on Twitter and let's talk. All right. Catch you all tomorrow, baby. Go Tigers.